It's so nice to meet you today. Welcome to my new podcast, the Afterthought Knits. This is going to be a knitting podcast where I'm going to talk about the projects that I'm working on, how they're going, and, generally show you what I've made recently. I think I'm going to keep it mostly to knitting, although there might be a couple sewing things that sneak their way in if I'm particularly excited about it. My name is Thalia. If you want to follow along with me online, my Instagram is by Thalia and my Ravelry is as well. I'll put up a little bar. I am so excited to be sharing what I've made with you. This is going to be a beginner knitting podcast because I am a beginner knitter. I picked up knitting last month. I've been absolutely loving it. It's been so much fun, and I thought it might be fun to show what I've made and how I've been making progress or lack thereof. For any other beginner knitters out there, we can, learn together. If you're already super experienced, like I know many people out there are, then maybe it'll take you back to when you were picking things up for the first time. And maybe it'll be interesting to, watch me learn as I get better and better, because I really like watching other people learn new things. Maybe you will as well. I'm going to run this, I think, like a pretty typical knitting podcast where I'll show you what I've made so far, what I'm working on currently, and what I'm going to be making next. If you see me looking down, I'm just referencing my notebook where I've made some things to make sure that I don't get too off track. I'm really excited, and I have a tendency to ramble when I am excited. I think I'm maybe not alone in that. Yeah, so I'll introduce myself. I'll talk a little bit about who inspired me to start podcasting and who inspired me to pick up knitting right now at all. I think that logistically this is going to be about a bi-weekly podcast so that I've got something that I've made and I'm not coming to you completely empty-handed. And today I am going to show you everything that I have knit ever. And I think that's going to make it maybe a little bit of a slightly longer podcast for today, but in the future, I think I'm going to add in a kind of like chatty sit and knit section, because I really like that when I watch knitting podcasts. It feels like you're, sitting with a friend, catching up, having just a nice little chat. And yeah, I would love, on that note, if we could, make some knitting connections. If you want to introduce yourself in the comments, that would be so cool. Maybe you could say a knitting technique that intimidates you a little bit, or something that intimidated you, but you tried it and it worked out. For me, it's definitely color work. I think it's like basically magic. It looks so beautiful, but I am a little bit afraid of it, which is, I know, like not super reasonable because it's just knitting and I shouldn't be as intimidated as I am. But in any case, I'm a little bit afraid. I'm sure that I will try it out at some point and hopefully get over that intimidation factor. And maybe I'll do that in a future episode. You could also say something that you like to do while you're knitting. Like I said, I've been watching a ton of knitting podcasts lately and I've been absolutely loving them. I also often listen to audio podcasts. I listen to them a lot while I'm at work, and then if I'm just really enjoying it, I'll, finish up an episode while I sit and do a little bit more knitting. I will get into it on that note. I hope you do take advantage of the comment box and introduce yourselves. I don't have a ton of people in my physical real life that are super into knitting, so it would be great to have some people to chat to about it. Anyways, so I got into knitting in this period of my life, which is really the only time that I've actually been into knitting, mostly through sewing, actually. So I like sewing. I've picked it up quite a bit in the past year, and I've started following a lot of people on Instagram who are amazing sewists and make such cool things. And a bunch of those people are also into knitting. And so some of the first people that I started following, Jacqueline Cieslak, she is a sewing and knitwear designer. Her Ursa sweater was one of the first things that I saw from her, and I thought it was really, really cool. So I started following her, and I think she was kind of one of the first people that I started keeping track of. She has a new book out with Pom Pom. It's called Embody, and there's some really, really cool stuff in there. Other people who I've been following who are big knitters, what Lydia made, she is so cool. I think she's so cool. And she knits, she sews, and she also crochets these really amazing bibs. I'll put a picture up. I'm obsessed with them. I want to buy one off her one day when I have a little bit more cash to spend. And then who really inspired me to pick up knitting and think that it was something that I personally could do rather than admire other people's skills, were the Social Fabric and Cool Stitches. They both have started knitting pretty recently, and they're kind of sharing their progress and the makes that they've made on their Instagrams, which are primarily sewing accounts, but they've also both been knitting, so I'll put some pictures of them up as well. Yeah, the first thing that I saw where I was like, oh, I really, really want to make that, it looks like something that I would love, is the Friday Slipover from Petite Knit. I saw a picture of it. I'm not 100% sure where anymore, but it was in a really nice camel color, and I think the person who posted, maybe it was on Reddit, I think the person who posted it on Reddit said that it took them about 3 months to make. I was like, that seems like a reasonable time frame. If I take 3 months to make something like that, I would be proud of myself. And so that person really inspired me to go check out the Petite Knit website. And while I was on there, I saw the holiday slipover, which I'm currently wearing, so you may know where this is going. Anyways, I saw it and I thought, you know what, that seems like an easier version of the Friday slipover, so maybe I'll give that one a shot. And before I wanted to pick up something that had to actually like fit my body and look really nice, I thought that maybe it would be a good idea to, test out knitting before I jumped right into the clothing aspect of it. So I also purchased from her the Oslo hat pattern, and that became my first knitting pattern. So, why I started a podcast. There are so many amazing knitting podcasts. I absolutely love them. I've been watching a lot of The Gentle Knitter, been watching a lot of Knitting Traditions. She was kind of the first knitting podcast that I found. And through her, I also found Woolly Witchcraft with Brogan. And Brogan seems so sweet, and she only picked up knitting in October, and she's already so good at it. And I was just thinking, if she can do it, I can do it. So she really inspired me to, start this podcast, something that I'm really excited about sharing what I've made. So yeah, on that note, on to the sharing aspect. So the first thing that I ever knit was the Oslo hat, and this is it. I knit this in Drops Flora, which is an alpaca wool blend. It is pretty soft. It's got some longer fibers, which I think give it a nice kind of like fuzzy look, and you hold the yarn double for it. Knitting it was not totally seamless, as you may expect for a first ever knitting project. So I started knitting it. You knit it in the round. I like knitting in the round, found that out. And when you've knit about like 8 inches or so, you knit 2 together with your cast on edge and your active stitches, and that joins the brim. And so one of the things that I noticed when I first started joining the brim was that it just like wasn't joining properly. It had a twist in the fabric and it just didn't look the way that I expected it to. So I went on to the Ask a Knitter thread on the knitting subreddit and posted a picture of my hat, and some experienced and very kind knitters on there told me that I had been twisting my stitches for the first bit, which I actually had realized. I'd seen another post about someone who realized that they'd been twisting their stitches, and there was someone explaining that, oh, I'll explain what a twisted stitch is and put a picture up of my hat and my twisted stitches. So basically, when you're knitting, there's the loop on your needle. And so there's a side of the loop that is closer to you and a side that is further away. And when you knit, you're supposed to go into the side that's closer to you and grab the yarn through. What I was doing was going into the side that's further away, grabbing the yarn and pulling it through, and that meant that all of my stitches had a twist in them. And when you knit twisted for 4 inches of a fabric and then you straighten yourself out and start knitting untwisted again, what happened to me is part of my fabric, the stitches were on a diagonal and part of them were straight like this. And then when I tried to fold those together, there was a twist. I hope that made sense. Anyways, it wasn't going well and I decided to rip the whole thing out and start again. And that, I think, was an awesome choice. It worked way better the second time around. And so you just knit it all the way up. You do a German short row method to turn it so that it's stockinette on both sides. And then you do some pretty straightforward decreases for the top, which I really liked. So I'll show you what this looks like on. It has quite a tall brim and some extra kind of fluff at the top. And it also used like just over 2 skeins. So it calls for 150 grams and it was like really, really close to 100 grams of yarn that it used. And so I thought if I make this again, I can probably get away with just 2 skeins instead of getting 3. So I went ahead and made it again. I did something else in between here that I'll show you in a minute. But this one I made in Drops Alpaca, which is just alpaca. It's a really nice kind of blue-purple mix, but I think their color is just called blue on their website. And I thought, oh, I'll just get the 2 skeins, it'll be fine. I made the brim a little bit shorter on this one, and then I made the length a similar length. And then I got halfway through my decreases and completely ran out of yarn. And so I ripped back, made this decreases start a little bit lower, and managed to make it through all the way okay. When I ripped back, I used something called an Afterthought lifeline, which is where the name of my podcast comes from. An Afterthought lifeline is basically if you realize that you screwed up, but you don't want to rip the whole thing out, you're afraid of losing a stitch, which I'm like super afraid of because it just freaks me out. I don't want to lose all the hard work that I've put in. You can do something called an Afterthought lifeline, which is where you take a piece of scrap yarn and a needle and you pick up the right-hand side of every single stitch. And then you do it all the way around, and then when you rip back, you can't rip past where you've put your lifeline in. So I'll show you how this one looks in comparison. It's a bit of a different look with the shorter brim, but it's really cozy, and I, like I said, live in Calgary. It gets really, really, really cold here in the winter. It goes down to like -30 or lower, so having an extra hat is not a bad thing. And then I'd made a few projects and I started feeling a little bit bad that I had made so many things for me and I hadn't made any for my partner. So I made a third Oslo hat, again with another thing in the middle that I'll show you in a moment. And so this is the one that I made for him. I made this one in a size large. I made it according to the pattern at first, but when he put it onto his head for the first time, he was having it just like slide down over his eyes a lot while he was walking. So I did the same thing that I did with the second Oslo hat and just started the decreases a little bit lower. So on him, he's got a bigger head than I do, which is why the other two don't fit him. On him, this is tight and doesn't fall down anymore. The reason why this one I ran out of yarn is because the Drops Alpaca in a 50-gram ball actually has a little bit less yardage than the Drops Flora, which I made my other 2 hats in. And I didn't realize that was like really a thing that could happen until after I got through this and was like, why did that happen? Because for this size large Oslo hat, which is like quite a bit bigger, this is how much yarn I had left over. This is the extra that I ripped out for to make it a little bit shorter, and that's what I had left from making it up the first time. So like a lot of extra yarn. So I think that if I made it again in the Drops Flora, I could probably just get away with the 2 skeins like I thought, making it according to pattern. I really liked this pattern. It was really easy to knit, pretty straightforward, and the instructions were really clear. I think it would be a great first pattern for anyone else out there, and I think I'm going to make up probably a bunch more for presents, for Christmas, that kind of thing, because it's just super straightforward. It turns out really clean and kind of minimalistic, and you can make it in any color you want to, so it should really suit anyone that I know, at least. So this was my first project, and I think my third and fifth. My second project is what I am currently wearing. It's the holiday slipover. I am insanely proud of myself for making this. Maybe you're laughing at me a little bit because I know it's not super technically difficult, but I'm in love with it. I've worn it so much since I finished making it. This one is made in Drops Nepal, held double, along with a strand of Drops Kid Silk Mohair. So you've got 3 strands of yarn, and you do it on like pretty thick needles. I think the body is a size 13, or maybe a size 15. The body's a size US 15, which are 10 millimeters. And so it knits up really quickly. Which was nice. It gives you a nice sense of accomplishment. In terms of any mishaps, the body went super well. So you knit it, you start at the back and you knit the top of the back, and then you pick up stitches at the shoulders, you knit the front, and then you join it in the round with some extra stitches that you cast on in the middle for your armpit area. And then join in the round, knit the body, and then split for the hem. It's got this cute little split hem. It knit up super well, and then so when you split the hem, you've got active stitches at the front and back. I ran into a little issue with the ribbing. The instructions, you split it so that there's an even number of stitches in the front and the back. And then you slip the first stitch, and you knit 1, purl 1 across. And then flip it, slip first stitch, knit 1, purl 1 across. I think. I might be misunderstanding it. Yeah. So basically I just kept getting, instead of rib, I would get seed stitch. And so rib, it's like all of the knits are in a row and all the purls are in a row, and that works because you knit on one side and you purl on the other side, and so the stitches look the same little V's all the way down. What I was getting was my knit stitches were all in a row, so on one side it was a V and on the other side it was a bar. I'll put a diagram so that makes sense. In any case, I just redid it like 3 times until I figured out where I was going wrong, and then I fixed it, and now it looks fine. I'm still not sure if I actually followed what the pattern said to do. I think this is really mostly user error, not pattern error. So yeah, that's on me. I'm sure if you do it, you'll be fine, and if not, you can send me a message and I'll try and help you out. Yeah, so really like this. It feels super silky and fluffy and cozy, and I've been wearing it a lot this spring. We've had a lot of days that are kind of in the 10 to 18 range, and this is perfect to wear either over a short sleeve on a little bit of a warmer day or over a long sleeve on a cooler day. And I ride my bicycle into work, and when I put on a jean jacket or another jacket with the vest, it doesn't constrict your arms. So if you've got a bit of a narrower sleeve and you're trying to shove a sweater in there, sometimes you get like a little bit stuck out. But this one, no issue, total arm freedom. So really happy with it, and I've been loving it. And then I was like, people are gonna start noticing if every single day at work I am wearing the exact same blue vest. And so I thought that I would make myself up a second one. So I made this one also in the Drops Nepal. This is the off-white color, held double, and I decided to make it without any mohair because I was thinking that I don't think it really needs it. You've got a nice like degree of fluffiness. I think that was a mistake. I do not like this one as much. It's a little bit less silky feeling, and I made this one a little bit differently. I made it a bit shorter, and instead of splitting the hem, I just kept going in the round and added ribbing, because I'd seen some other vests that I thought were cute like that. I think that both of those choices were mistakes. Yeah. Oh, I should mention for this one, it called for 50 grams of the mohair, but I only used 25. I made the ribbing at the neck and the arms a little bit shorter, and I ran out of my first 25-gram ball of mohair when I had half of a round of arm ribbing and the cast off. And that was all that I had left. And I thought, I don't think people are going to really notice if that one cast off edge does not have any mohair in it. And I don't notice, I can't even tell which side doesn't have the mohair in it, and I'm wearing it and looking at it up close. So 25 grams was enough for the smallest size for me. Yeah, this one, not as much of a fan without the mohair. And also, the split hem, you make the ribbing a little bit shorter in the front than you do in the back. And so this is knit totally flat. It doesn't have any bust shaping or anything like that. And I don't have a huge difference between my underbust and my bust. So I don't need a lot of bust shaping, and I wasn't overly worried. But on this one, it does pull up a little bit in the front, more than it does in the back. So that makes it look like it's just too short in the front. Whereas on this one with the split hem, it looks like a design choice. So I think that the split hem is a really nice feature in that sense, because it kind of hides the fact that there's no shaping, and it's an oversized garment, so you don't need the shaping to make it fit, but the split hem hides the fact that the front gets pulled up a little bit. Anyways, big fan of this. I'm gonna tell you my future plans for this when I get to the next segment. So I made all those, and I thought, okay, up for a new challenge. And I saw My Favorite Things Knitwear posted their scarf number 1, which they called a simple lace pattern. And I thought to myself, simple sounds great. Simple is what I want, but it would be fun to learn something new. So I tested out lace. So this is what I made. This is made in Sandes Garn Merino wool. I don't know how to say that. I will put it up on the screen. It's a 100% merino fingering weight. It's not overly fuzzy, so I thought it would be good for the summer. And yeah, really like this lace pattern. Don't know if I like yellow on me. It's just, I love it when it's not on my body. I love looking at it. I think yellow is really pretty and a really nice color. And this is so buttery and sunshiny and happy looking. But then I put it onto myself and I don't feel as happy about it as I do when I look at it. But I've been wearing it a lot. The hairdressers have been closed here, and so my bangs were getting in my eyes and getting really long. And so I've been wearing it as a headband, bandana like this. This is the bandana length version. It also comes with a scarf length version. And you may remember that I told you that I had a lot of leftovers from making my Oslo hats. And that's a fingering weight, so I thought, you know what, I'll give this another shot in the scarf version. One of the things, I'll get to that in a minute. Yeah, so I made the scarf version. This is the scarf one. It is a little bit longer and skinnier than the bandana, which is a little bit more of a compact triangle. I'll show you them side by side. So there's the yellow bandana versus the blue scarf. You can see that the scarf is quite a bit longer, and it has a more narrow tapering. This is going to be a lot of blue on blue, but this one you can wear wrapped around your neck twice. That's how they've styled it in their photo that I'm sure I've already shown you at this point. As a cute little bandana, necktie, wrap it around this way like a little cape. It makes me feel a little bit like a Girl Guide, but not in a bad way, just kind of Girl Guide-y. I did guides when I was a kid. And I really like that. I think this is an awesome kind of spring scarf. And This is supposed to be knit in a cashmere. That's what the pattern calls for. The Drops Flora worked great for it if you want to stay a little bit more budget conscious. But one thing that I found a lot with these, especially the lace has a line of purling on either side so that you get the nice lace pattern. And my hand was cramping up like crazy. I first learned how to knit like just basic knit purl stitches when I was a kid. My grandma taught us. She made me and my little sister like these really cute ponchos that had nice fluffy neck and hem lines. But I don't think I ever really got beyond basic knit and purl, and she taught us in English style, which is, I think, a lot of people got taught English style first. And when I was like relearning how to knit right now, I picked up continental style because I thought it seemed, I don't know, more efficient maybe. I just don't love when you're knitting and you have to like grab the needle and then wrap around and then grab again. It felt kind of slow to me, so I thought I'll pick up continental style. And for the most part, I really like it, especially when you're knitting. But for purling in continental style, you're like bringing the yarn around the needle and then scooping it back. And I was having a really hard time like getting the yarn to stay on my needle, and I was having to push down, and I was getting really bad cramps through like the back of my hand. It was just really uncomfortable. And I remembered someone mentioning the concept of a Norwegian purl. And so in Norwegian style knitting, when you purl, you don't actually move where the yarn is. So it stays in the same spot. You're not moving the hand that's holding the yarn, which is your left hand instead of your right hand. So continental and Norwegian, you hold the yarn in your left hand. And they're quite similar in terms of the knit stitch. And so you kind of like grab and you do a little dancey thing for the Norwegian purl, and I really liked it. But I thought it would be good to practice that. So I picked up some simple cotton yarn and made a couple of washcloths. I made one in a lime green. This is I think it's called the Spa Day face cloth pattern on Ravelry. And yeah, it's super cute, really functional in terms of washing as a washcloth, so I like that one a lot. And then I made one for my partner in this like beautiful blue, and I made this one in moss stitch. Fun fact for the other beginners out there, I always thought that like moss stitch and seed stitch, that these were like actually different things that you did with your needles. It turns out it's just patterns of knits and purls that make a fabric, and that's what they call moss stitch or seed stitch. So for moss stitch, you knit one, you cast on an uneven number of stitches, and then you knit one, purl one, knit one, purl one. And then on the reverse side, you purl one, knit one, purl one, knit one. And when you do that, then you switch on the next one. So you'd be purl one, knit one. Anyways, it gives you a nice little pattern. I hope you can see this, but you get a line and then two little V's. And it's nice and bumpy, which makes it nice as like a gentle exfoliating face cloth. And I thought that this helped me definitely pick up Norwegian style. It was good practice to practice switching between knitting and purling. And I mean, you can't really go wrong having an extra washcloth around. Really not a super big investment in time, in money, and it's something that's definitely useful. I also picked up a little bit more yarn after I finished up those because I was like, love it. Face cloths. It seems like the way to go. And I saw on the Gentle Knitter podcast, if you don't watch her podcast, her name's Nicole. She's from Ottawa. She's so sweet, so nice. I want her to like be my aunt or something. It really is very soothing. Anyways, she was talking on her podcast about the Purl Soho half and half wrap or shawl. It's basically you knit it up in like a big square, and one triangle is one color and the other triangle is the other color. And I thought, you know what, that sounds like a great thing to do as a face cloth. Turns out Purl Soho and I are 100% on the same page because that pattern already exists for free on their website. So I didn't even have to figure out how to translate a shawl pattern into a washcloth pattern because they'd already done it for me. So I picked up the same yarn that I used for the other two, which is the Sheepy's Katona. I should have mentioned that earlier, but I'll put the thing up. Anyways, so I picked it up in an orange and a pink to make a nice little new washcloth. They suggest for this one that you cast on 72 stitches. I cast on 60, and like it's pretty big in terms of a washcloth if you wanted to wash your face. So I think maybe next time I'll cast on even less. But yeah, you knit it, if you want to practice your short rows, it's knit in short rows. So you cast on, you knit all the way across, and then each time you do a wrap and turn short row 1 stitch sooner to get the first color. And then you pick up all of those stitches and then do, again, short rows to make the second color. And then you do a little I-cord hook binding thing. This is my first time doing an I-cord. Also my first time doing short rows. I think that something like a washcloth is a really great place to practice that, because if you mess up, it's literally a washcloth. No one's ever going to see it if you don't want them to, and it will still work if your stitches aren't nice. Yeah, so practiced my first ever I-cord. I-cords are so cute. It's like making a little rope. And I'm really excited about this. One interesting note is, turns out that yarn that is exactly the same can feel really different in different colors. This red, or this is called cherry, I think, it's a lot crunchier feeling than the orange side, and it has less drape than the orange side as well, which is interesting. I'm sure it'll soften up when I put it in the wash. I just finished this one up this morning, so hasn't been washed or anything yet. But anyways, really excited about it. I'll talk a little bit about what my next steps are. I picked up some yarn for specific projects. I don't really have the budget currently to be picking things up without something very specific in mind. Anyways, so my next project, works in progress. Oops. So, I've been watching Woolly Witchcraft. And Brogan, who just started knitting in October, she's so sweet, and she has been knitting a lot of socks, and I was like, you know what, she's a new knitter, and she can do socks, so I thought, I'm gonna try it. You know, if something goes wrong, it's not the end of the world. This is one of the lovely things about knitting that isn't true for sewing, which is, like I said, my other main kind of crafty thing, is in knitting, if you mess up, you can just like rip it all out and start again, which is amazing. In sewing, if I mess up, if I like make a cut in the wrong place, I can reuse the fabric for something else that is smaller, but I can't just kind of go back to the beginning and start again with the same materials. So I think that's super cool about knitting. Anyways, I went to the yarn store. I went to Stash Lounge in Inglewood, and the people there set me up with my first ever sock. I'm knitting this in Cascade Heritage sock yarn in their burgundy color, I think. And it's a superwash merino and either nylon or poly, I can't remember. Anyways, it's a blend, which gives it a little bit more yarn strength and makes it wear through less quickly, if I understand correctly. And I'm using the I'm So Basic sock pattern by Summer Lee Knits. I would highly recommend this for your first ever sock if you're thinking of trying it out. She teaches you how to use the magic loop method, which is basically, instead of using double pointed needles, which is what I'm using right now, you get like a really, really long cabled or circular needle. And, you know, some of your stitches that are active are on one side, some that aren't active are just on your cable, or they are active, but you're not knitting them currently. And then because it's really, really long, you can like loop around with your other side of your circular needle. That was not the best explanation. She explains it really, really well in a series of YouTube videos. So there's videos for every single step of this pattern. So that makes it really, really straightforward if this is your first time ever making socks. It is knit, it has a 2x1 rib for the cuff, which is where you knit 2 and then purl 1. And then you just do stockinette for however long you want your sock to be. Then you rest some of your stitches while you work your heel thingy, heel flap? Maybe heel flap. And it's a knit 1, slip 1 heel flap, which basically makes like a double thickness fabric because you have your slipped stitches going behind every knit stitch. And really like the slip 1, knit 1 heel flap. That's a lot of fun to do. Less intimidating than it sounds. It's actually pretty straightforward. Anyways, and then you turn your heel. Turning the heel is basically you like do decreases that make it into a rounded shape instead of a totally flat shape because your heel is rounded. It's a purl 2 together on one side and a slip knit on the other side. Another fun fact, I assumed that when you slip knit, it meant that you slip a stitch and then you slip a stitch and then you knit the third stitch. That is untrue for other fellow beginners. Slip knit, it means you slipped the first 2 stitches knitwise. So that means you're going in as if to knit them. And then when you put them back on your other needle, that's the next step, you put them back on your other needle, that means that they've kind of twisted. And then you knit through both of them. So you've slipped it, and you've slipped it, and then you've put it back, and then knit through both of those stitches. And that is a decrease. So slip, knit, it's a decrease. Lesson learned. Anyways, so you turn the heel, and then you pick up stitches in the gusset. I know it's kind of hard to see on the camera, but you pick up stitches along one side of your heel flap. The first side that I did was kind of messy, and I wasn't thrilled with it. The second side that I did was a lot neater. Oh, there. That's side 2. That's side 1. Anyways, yeah, not thrilled with side 1, but that was my first ever time picking up stitches on a heel, so I'm forgiving myself. And then you just do some decreases to bring it back down to the circumference of your foot, and then you knit and stockinette. In terms of things that went wrong in this project, I was finding that my fabric was pilling a lot through the leg, and I was kind of worried that it was something to do with the yarn, but I went into the Loop in Kensington because I was picking something else up, and I was telling her I was thinking of buying some new sock yarn because I was worried that it was the yarn, and so she was like, just pull out your sock, let me look at it, and I'll see if I can help you out with it. And so she measured my gauge, and she said that my gauge is really tight, so I think I'm at about 22 stitches instead of 28. For other beginners, gauge is basically how many stitches there are in a specific area. So it's normally like a 10 by 10 centimeter or a 4 inch by 4 inch square, and how many stitches go across and how many stitches go up. And yeah, that just is what gauge is. Anyways, so she said, you're just knitting really tightly. Calm down. Be less stressed out about it, and maybe that should help. So I took her advice for the lower part, and it does seem to be helping. So it's not the yarn, it is me, which is like not always what you want to hear, but in this case, it is what I want to hear because I've got a lot of yarn left to use up. In terms of the needles that I'm using, these are double pointed needles in a US size 1. I don't think I really like the double pointed needles. I'm like really stressed out constantly that I'm gonna drop a stitch, and that's making me like tense up and knit a lot tighter because I don't want the stitches to slip off. I think practice will make it better, but the other thing that I don't love about it is I feel like it's making me slower because I keep having to switch needles every like 20 stitches instead of just like zipping around in a circle. So we'll see. Yeah. The other thing that I've cast on is the Park and Knit Ghost Whisperer tee. I first saw this from a test knit by what Lydia made on Instagram, who I've mentioned before, I think is the coolest. She's such an amazing creator. She makes such nice things, and she wears a lot of like bright colors, which I don't normally, but I'm trying to wear more color because it genuinely makes me really happy. Anyways, so Lydia made hers in a hot pink, so I bought myself a bright pink. This is the Drops Kid Silk Mohair, the same as what I used in this Slipover. And it's knit on quite large needles. I'm using a US 10 or a 6mm needle, which is not right. I think it's supposed to be a 6.5mm needle, but I'm using an Addy Click interchangeable set. I'll show you how it works. I got it off somebody on Facebook who just had another interchangeable needle set and wasn't using it. And I was getting frustrated after I made this and the hat. I was like, I don't want to keep buying individual fixed length needles when I want to be knitting a lot of different things that I'm really enjoying it. So the Addy Click set, this is what it looks like. It's got this nice little carrying case with a zipper in the back that holds your cables. You can pull out a cable. This is like a massive one, but for the purposes of our demonstration, that'll be fine. And then you grab whatever needle size you want. This is a US 7. And you just, there's a hole in the back. You match it up with the tip of the cable, push on, and spin until it clicks. And then once it's clicked, it doesn't come off. I have been liking it a lot. There's a little bit of a ridge where the connection point is, but I mean, most of the time your stitches are a lot bigger than the size of the needle, so that does not matter most of the time. On my 3.5s, which is the smallest size in here, when I was knitting it really tightly, it mattered a little bit, but I think it's also just kind of a good incentive to practice knitting a little bit looser, which I learned from my sock is important. Anyways, so I've been enjoying the set, but I spent like a reasonable amount of money on it, and I did not want to purchase more needles because I was like, I just got all of these ones. We're just gonna make it work. It's gonna happen. It's gonna be fine. So, like I said, the Ghost Whisper, it's knit in this mohair, and there's not a lot of like stretch to the mohair yarn. You can see it's not really going anywhere. So I thought this is a great opportunity for me to practice just loosening up a little bit. So I'm using the smaller needles, like I said. I'm excited about it. I've dropped a couple stitches that I've had to pull back up, so I'm trying to be really careful to not do that. I think it's because I'm knitting through, I'm accidentally knitting through the stitch below because there isn't a lot of like give in the mohair, and so it gives more in the stitch below and goes through, but I'm paying more attention after I realized what I was doing, and I'm really liking it so far. It's this really meshy kind of fabric. I think it's going to be great to like put in my bag, throw on over a t-shirt or a tank top during the summer if I want a little bit of an extra layer. And it's so cute. Such a nice color. So that is what I'm working on right now and what I've already made. I am so excited. I'm absolutely loving it. And I'll talk a little bit about what I want to make next. Once I finish up my Ghost Whisper and that sock. So like I said, I was at Loop buying something, and that was, I was on the phone with one of my friends from my undergraduate degree. She lives in Halifax, which is like all the way across the country, so we don't get to see each other very often. But I was showing her the bandana that I made, and she thought it was super cute, and so I'm gonna make one for her. I'm gonna make it in this sage green Drops Flora again, keep it nice and economical. And then I'll send that off to her, and so it'll be nice to send her a little bit of a present because I miss Halifax and I miss my friends. When I was making these the first time around, I realized, especially in the scarf one, that I kept forgetting to yarn over in the middle. Yarning over is when you literally just like wrap the yarn around your needle before you do your next stitch. And when you do that, it increases by 1, so you get an extra stitch onto your needles when you get to your next round, and it also makes a little bit of a hole underneath. So when you're doing lace, that is a good thing. You want holes, that's what makes it look lacy. When you're doing something like the Slipover, you don't want holes because then it would look like there's a hole in your sweater. And so the increases on this one used a make one left or make one right is I think what she called it, where basically like you knit through the connector in between the last two stitches. And this one uses a yarn over. But I kept realizing, especially in the last ones, that I'd get to the middle and I hadn't done my yarn over. And then I'd just knit through the connector because I was like, there's no way I'm going back 100 stitches to like do it properly. It's just too much at this point. So hopefully with this one, I will remember my yarn overs. On a like semi-similar note with the 100 stitches on the hem, this one is knit in a top down, so you cast on like a small number of stitches in the middle and then you increase it as you go out. I think that if I ever do like a big shawl project, which I'm thinking about because I really like in the morning just kind of wrapping myself in a blanket, and I do that quite frequently when I'm sitting on the couch at home. So I thought it might be nice to make myself a shawl for that purpose. I don't really think that it's something that I could wear outside of the house because I work in a lab. I work in a research lab, and so having things that are just like wrapped around you and not securely fastened to your body aren't necessarily a super practical choice, but at home it seems cozy. Anyways, I think that if I ever do that, I would definitely do a bottom down construction where you cast on the whole like long edge and then decrease, because I've found that like even with this, which I think when you end you have some like 250 or something stitches on it, I was getting really frustrated because it was taking so long, and in the beginning it had been so fast. So I thought it would be a lot more fun if it's really long in the beginning and then at the end you're like, I'm just going through so quickly. Give you a little bit more of a sense of satisfaction. Yeah, like I mentioned, I work in a lab, so I wear a lot of like jeans and a t-shirt kind of outfits. I have to wear pants all the time. And my clothes aren't supposed to be really baggy. I can't have big sleeves or anything like that. And I don't want to ruin nice things if I spill bleach on myself, which is a real risk. And I've got several items that I've ruined by spilling bleach on myself. So scarves like these ones are a really nice way to kind of like brighten up my outfit, but I don't really want to be wearing an alpaca scarf in like a 30-degree day. So I got myself this cotton linen blend from BC Garn. It's called Alino. The color is in cherry, and it's got red and a kind of like coral color mixed together. And it's very cool to the touch because it's got that cotton linen. And so I'm going to make myself another little scarf for the summer in this color. And then by the time these guys are done, I am going to be so good at yarning over. I better be. Yeah, for these ones, again, I had to kind of unravel a couple times because it turns out I'm not good at counting. I thought I was okay at it. I am not. So in the beginning, I was just, especially in the first one, before I had established my first lace row, I kept forgetting where I was and then just ripping back. And I inserted a couple of Afterthought lifelines in the lace rows where I was like, I don't know what I've done. I'm just going to go back. Yeah. So yeah, while I was at the Loop in Kensington, I also picked up this Senda's Garn tin line. I think it means thin line. It is a 53% linen, 33% viscose, 53% cotton, 33% viscose, and 14% linen blend. And I'm going to use it to make, it's a really pale purple color that I like a lot. I'm going to use it to make a summer tank top because I really don't need a ton of like big heavy sweaters right now. And so I'm looking at either, I think the Summer Secret Crop by Jessie May Designs. That one is a free pattern during COVID, and she asks that you donate to an organization. I think there's a food support organization that she has linked in her blog and on her Ravelry. So I'm thinking of doing that, or maybe the Simplistic Rib Cami by Lydia on Instagram. I'll put a picture and there are links to both of those up as well. But I think that would be nice. I'm kind of leaning towards the Lilac one because it's got a little bit of a wider strap. and I don't know how I feel about wearing these without a bra. I'm normally okay with it, but I don't know, does it chafe? Does anybody feel like that's too personal of a question to answer in the comments? Let me know. Anyways, on that note, I also went to another knitting store this week because I was looking for a sewing needle because I broke one, so I wanted to replace it. And next to the sewing store that I was at is Stash Lounge in Inglewood, and they had a really big sale section going, so I indulged slightly. I picked up, first of all, this mohair from Manos del Uruguay. It's their autumn colorway. It's 80% kid mohair and 20% poly, and it's got a really beautiful color variation in it. There's lilac, there's a darker purple, there's pinks, blues, a little bit of brown, and it's very soft feeling. I like the look of it a lot, and I thought that I could use this. It's got 25 grams in here and 230 yards, which is the same weight as the Drops Kid Silk that I was using earlier. And I thought that I could give it a shot at frogging this guy and putting them together. And so I think that might liven up the cream a little bit. I thought that having a cream sweater would be like, I don't know, a good staple, but I don't think it's totally for me. It feels a little bit flat when I put it on. I get why cream sweaters are really popular. It's like really pretty. It just doesn't bring me as much joy as the blue does. So I thought that putting these together might be a fun way to feature the colors in this mohair and liven up the cream and add a little bit of the silkiness that I feel like this one is lacking. So I'm excited for that, and I think that will knit up really quickly. This was, I think, 30% off. And there were a couple extra skeins left, and because this is a fast pattern, if I run out on the very end of this, I'll just go out and grab another skein. Also in their sale section, I found this Katia Kashwool. It's 70% wool, 25% poly, and 5% cashmere in a, what they kindly described to me as a sport weight or light DK. I am not gonna lie, I do not totally know what that means, but it says on here that they recommend using 3 to 3.5 millimeter needles. And also in the sale section, they had these little Addy turbos. It's an 8-inch cable length, and it's so cute. And I wasn't loving the double-pointed needles, like I said, so I thought maybe these would be a good way to try out a different method of sock knitting. And because this is a little bit heavier weight than the Cascade Heritage that I'm using for my current socks, it should knit up quickly, and I'll get to see if I like these. And because they were on sale, it wasn't a huge investment either, so I'm feeling good about that. And then last but not least, I got this really nice hand-dyed, it's from Flock and Fiber Studios. It's a sock yarn. It's 80% merino, 20% nylon. And it's got this really nice colors. There's a blue side, there's a kind of orangey red side. And I thought it would be fun to have a little bit more of a colorful take on the sock. This one, because it was my first one, I thought that if I got a darker and uniform color, maybe that would hide any mistakes that I made a little bit better. But this one, by the time I get to it, is going to be sock number 3. So by sock number 3, things should be good to go. Anyways, that is my major plans for the moment. I think that it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm really enjoying this, and I hope that you enjoyed seeing what I've made so far, and where things have gone well or less than well. Yeah, I hope that you enjoy watching. I'll talk a little bit about kind of making things in general. It makes me so happy. I love using things that I've made. I love wearing things that I've made. One of the quarantine hobbies that we picked up was ceramics, and we took a class for, I think, about 6 months. And so I made this mug. And, you know, waking up in the morning and drinking coffee out of a mug that I've made just, like, adds a lot of joy to my day. You know, making things that are functional, that I can use, they have a purpose, and I get a lot of joy out of that. I like to, I don't know, think of myself as a semi-creative person, but I don't totally love things like painting or drawing because I have a lot of trouble translating like the image in my mind onto paper. But with sewing and with knitting, I find that having a pattern to follow and this kind of structure that gives me just like lets me feel a lot freer and have a lot of fun with it. Yeah, I'm excited to be here. I hope that you enjoy the podcast. I might put a little bit of footage in at the end, but this is a kind of spur of the moment thing, so I don't have a ton this time. But in the future, yeah, really lovely to meet you all, and I will go now so that I zip it and stop rambling quite as much. Have a great week, and it was nice to meet you. I dripped on it.